Today, I wore my daughter on my chest for about 7 hours, which in and of itself was a great feat of personal strength that I wouldn't have necessarily had years ago. But the cherry on top of that is that for about 2.5 to 3 hours of me wearing her today, she screamed. And I don't know if you've ever had a person or an infant scream at your heart, but it is a harrowing experience. It is something that I'm finding to be a fantastic test of character and growth. For the first 40 years of my life, I managed to avoid all infants and little children. I would tell people that I had an allergy to them, which was not wholly true. In fact, that was a lie. But it wasn't a complete fabrication. I didn't know how to deal with them. I didn't know how to relate to them. They were strange alien creatures from other planets, right? You couldn't have a conversation with them and just reason and say, hey, we have a bunch of adults here, some older kids. Would you mind not screaming right now? It's very loud. If it wouldn't be a bother. You can't reason with them. And in practice, people would bring their children to me all the time. And 3 years of age and up, that was easy. You kneel down, you make eye contact, you say, hey, sweetie, how are you doing? I'm going to work on you today. How's that sound? And they would come to my table and I would work with them and I would support them. And they'd get off, and by and large, the majority of the kids did fantastic. Infants, all bets were off. If I picked up an infant, they would scream. I'd look at the parent chagrined and think, I must be a monster. The infant is screaming. Why can't I cause them to stop screaming? Where's the button that you push that makes it stop? Oftentimes I would hand the child back to the parent and I would work on the child screaming while the parent was holding, so at least I had a partner in crime. But then having children of my own, what an ego buffer that is. What a polisher. That'll smooth out any wrinkle that you have. Because day-to-day conversation you have with people will lie. And not necessarily in a blatant way. They'll just say how are you doing? And the person will say, fine, because that's what you say. You say, fine. Your leg could be on fire. A volcano could be erupting, and you say, fine, because you don't want to trouble anybody. Or somebody could be communicating something to you, and you know that what they're saying is just blowing smoke. But you don't call them out on it because it's too much trouble. So you just move through your everyday life. No harm, no foul. But an infant or a young child, all bets are off. You are in truth zone, the perfect mirror. Because whatever you're feeling cannot be couched. It doesn't matter if you got 5 hours sleep. In fact, if you've gotten less sleep, they're likely going to cry more because they require you to co-regulate them. They require your nervous system to act as a nervous system for them to quiet and calm them down so they can ground the energy. It's tough being in a body. I don't know if you realize this. It is tough being in a body. This is why people turn to substances and escapes and social media and everything like that, because to be here and be present and to ground the intensity of life, it takes something. And for small children, it takes a lot, which is why they scream. Because it takes a lot to be in a body. It is confusing. I have to imagine it's very confusing. Them swimming in some sort of liminal realm, a heaven, a place that feels like bliss, and they're in this watery abyss. And then all of a sudden, they're breathing air, and they're hungry, and they don't know how to feed themselves. And all these strange people are making faces at them. So today I'm wearing her for 7 hours. And I can do that. I can do that blindfolded, but it's the 3 hours, give or take, where she's screaming, where I'm still growing. So I'll put on music. I'll kiss her head. I'll make eye contact with her. I'll communicate to her. One of the most potent things I do is I breathe into myself. I slow down and I breathe into myself. I feel my heart. I connect my feet to the ground. I hold her. I create a nervous system that feels reassured and calm. I walk around. But I also know intrinsically that at some time the crying has to stop. And just like with humans, like adults, sometimes you have to cry it out. Not be left in a room by yourself without another nervous system. I don't agree with that. And if you've done that, I'm not here to judge you. Some people still do. But it's to understand that they are full and they don't know how to process, and you have to be with them. And that teaches you to be with anybody. If you can be with a screaming infant and still retain your capacitance for sanity, for not going completely crazy, then you can meet the world. There's a line from Bruce Lee that I love. I love this line. It's stillness, and stillness is not the true stillness. It's only stillness in chaos that the universal rhythm is manifest. Stillness in chaos that the universal rhythm is manifest. What my daughter is teaching me, she's 4 months old, what my daughter is teaching me is the stillness in chaos, because she's not in agreement to be still with me. I have to learn a stillness. I have to ground my body. I have to breathe. I have to breathe. I have to breathe. Because I have to be responsible here. And responsible does not mean punishing myself. And responsible doesn't mean projecting onto another person. Responsible means being in the chaos. And what better way to do it? So an infant actually reveals something that is true to all of us. True to all of us, because they're living in a place that is highly emotional, highly dysregulated, but cannot suppress it. We walk around our lives and we suppress it. And if we're faithful with it, we get a diagnosis at some point. Somebody tells you that you're depressed. Somebody tells you that you're anxious. And you go, well, yeah, of course I am. But what does that mean? That means you're unregulated. It means you're unregulated. And I'm not talking about neurochemically, because that's a piece of it. A small piece, but a piece of it. It means you're unregulated. It means it's difficult to ground and have presence. With depression, it means that you've learned to shut down a part of yourself, to suppress, because what you have inside of you is years and years of a scream. There's an infant inside of you that is screaming, but nobody's listening. With anxiety, the sky is falling, the building is on fire, and you don't know where to turn and where to go. Bend that to its extreme, and you develop schizophrenia, where the mind is so jumbled, has no anchor point, no place to ground. There's so many selves inside there, you start developing multiple personality. But the basis, the condition, is consistent. There's no regulation. The food that goes in, the thoughts that go in, the people that are around you, there's no regulation. So with my daughter, I have to be the point of regulation. And magnanimously, I can say, I'm doing it for her. And I might even fool myself into thinking that that's what's happening. But really, she's training me. She is the guru. She is the great teacher. She's not wearing saffron robes. She's not sitting on a raised dais with flowers all around her. But she is the teacher. And she's saying to me, Benjamin, can you be still in the chaos? Can you be still in the chaos? And I have no choice but to be still in the chaos. I can fight. I could yell. She'll scream more. And then I go into guilt and shame for having yelled at a 4-month-old. Though I'm sure my energy at times felt like it was yelling, because I felt helpless and out of control. We only yell, we only attack when we're out of control, when we're dysregulated, when we're out of control, when there's no regulation. That's when we act out. We become reactive. But to be non-reactive, to be the still point, to be the center of the storm, where there's a hurricane, the calmest point is in the center. To be the center of your own storm system allows others to find safe harbor, allows you to become a point of entrainment or co-regulation where you're able to regulate people around you by being a lighthouse, a point where people can see that you are safe and they can anchor to you, connect to you. You are not then responsible for processing their energy or taking on, karmically or otherwise, what they have going on inside. No. What it really means is that you get to retain your stillness, that you found your center and it is unshakable, implacable. And that in and of itself is the gift. Years ago, I had a friend who taught himself how to meditate. And in the process of teaching himself how to meditate, he would go to a shopping mall, a very chaotic environment, and he would ground himself, maybe sit in half lotus, close his eyes, reach a still point. And people would be walking all around him, making noise. It might be during the holidays that he did this. A very active shopping center. And he would find his still point. And if you can find it there, you can find it anywhere. And if you can find it anywhere, it belongs to you. If you can't find it at all, you have to find it somewhere. It could be your church. It could be a ritual. It could be your practice. It could be through other people. It could be through this video that you're finding a still point or rediscovering your center. What I would tell people I worked with over the years is, if you can't find a still point, go out into the world where it's still. Sit by a still lake, placid like a mirror, where the water doesn't ripple and it's quiet. Where the wind is not really rustling, it's quiet, the breeze is still, calm, the world around you is calm. Go to that place. Create a sanctuary within your home. Create a sanctuary within yourself. Once you've found that sanctuary, build it larger and larger. Some of the first churches were congregations of people in settings that were nowhere near as fantastic or majestic as some of the cathedrals you've been. No, inauspicious settings, dirt floors, clandestine, underground catacombs. But then they started building the temple outward. That's what we do. We build the temple inwardly. First, very humble. And we build it outwardly and expand upon it, broadening it. When you hold your center, there's no differentiation between an infant, a child, or an adult. And when you interact with adults, you see the whole spectrum. You see the child inside of them. You see the infant inside of them that so badly needs to communicate the emotion inside, but can't find the means to do so. You become a regulating point for them, not to take it on, but to show them that they can be loved anywhere. That you're not judging them for what they're experiencing, but you're not losing what is true throughout the entire process, just like I did not lose today what is true with my daughter, which is there is a great beauty inside of you, a great beauty, and it ties into your center, and it ties into the love you carry inside of you. And if you hold true to that, you'll never be lost again. So I want to thank you for connecting in with this video. I had waves today, waves where I felt sorry for myself, waves where I felt like I couldn't handle it, waves where I wondered if I was worthy to record videos or to create things for the world, to share with the world, if I was a hypocrite in doing so. But what I found was this is what I had to walk through today to share with you this evening. That when you're tested, the test is always for a purpose. There's a greater teaching, a greater lesson, a greater level of capacity or capacitance. You can carry a stronger charge. You can carry more love. You can carry more presence or more centeredness. If you aren't tested, how would you know? If you aren't challenged, how would you get there? How would you find your blind spots? My children have taught me more than any teacher has ever taught me, and made me realize that the teacher is not necessarily someone who is wizened or old, who speaks in eloquent ways. That's not necessarily the teacher. The teacher is ever present. And if I can just pay attention to where I'm being triggered, or where I'm losing my center for even a moment, then I can reclaim myself. I can look at all the different angles. I can know myself, just like you can. And the next time you pick up an infant, maybe you look at them differently. Or the next time you're startled, the next time you're challenged. That's the gift. So, thank you. Thank you.